We're less than a week away from the return of Jack the Joker Hermansson as he takes on the saltiest man in the UFC, Joe Pyfer. And I'm going to give my breakdown and predictions for every single fight on this card as I look to get my 5th main event in a row. A lot of people are complaining about this fight night, but I think it's being slept on. All right. And I am not going to use that term loosely. There's a lot of young talent, a lot of potential on this card, and I think we're going to be looking at this as a fight night with breakout stars. There are going to be a lot of UFC debuts to remember, and make sure to tune in because we're going to get a lot of impressive performances on this one. There's some fun fights. I actually think that the prelims are a little bit more enticing than the co-main and the feature fight as well. So without further ado, let's get into this. If you guys want to hear a take of mine on just one of these fights, make sure to check the timestamps in the description. The first fight that I'm going to break down is Daniel Marcos, the undefeated Daniel Marcos, the guy that beat Davy Grant, who's one of these crafty guys with a fire hydrant head. You're not going to hurt Davy Grant. Marcos went tit for tat with Grant. He got the decision. I thought Davy Grant edged it out. It was a little bit controversial, but either way, he's good enough to beat Davy Grant to sustain an undefeated record. How is Aori Qileng doing? Not so well. Not so well. He's got 3 L's in the UFC. His best win is over Jay Perrin. And you know what? 15-0 undefeated Daniel Marcos, who at least looked good in the striking against Davy Grant, who has a reach advantage. And then he's got a really good finish in his UFC debut versus Aori Qileng, who has been chinned before. Listen, man, I think that we're going to see Daniel Marcos make easy work of Aori Qileng. And I know I'm butchering that name. I'm sorry. I think he's going to go out there and knock him out in the first round. So let's get on to the next one. Hyder Amil versus Fernie Garcia. Fernie Garcia is moving up a weight class. This is going to be at featherweight. And he's moving up from bantamweight, where he just got dominated by Rinya Nakamura. And Rinya Nakamura is a sick wrestler from Japan. And he kind of just smudged Fernie into the canvas for 3 rounds. I expected him to either knock him out or get a submission. He wasn't able to finish Fernie Garcia, but I remember that it was a really embarrassing performance. And I was saying going into that, Fernie's on the chopping block. This guy has yet to get a UFC win. Actually, he only has 1. Oh, no, he doesn't have any UFC wins. Holy shit. He was 0-2 going into that. Now he's 0-3 in the UFC. He's a survivor. I'll give him that, man. He's pretty tough, and he's got some survival instincts. He's not a quitter because he's not been finished yet. And Rinya Nakamura is no joke. Man, he's on the chopping block. I think he's going to come out here like a rabid dog, looking for a finish early. Hyder Amil, on the other hand, is bigger than him. And ultimately, I am going to pick him. I don't even know if I've said my pick yet, but I'm picking Hyder Amil. And I think he is going to out-muscle Fernie Garcia and maybe knock him out. Okay, so I am going to go with Hyder Amil. He's 8-0. He's undefeated. He's coming off of a Dana White Contender Series win. And I've watched a couple of his fights back. He's got big power. Again, he's going to have a significant size advantage. And Fernie Garcia is just, he's had a real disappointing career so far, man. An incredibly disappointing career so far. So I'm going to pick Hyder Amil. There was one thing that I noticed on Fernie Garcia's record that I want to look at one more time. No, not, is it the guy that he beat? Oh, it was Journey Newsom. He lost to Journey Newsom. Why am I bringing this up? Because he's lost to everyone. Journey Newsom's lost to 4 people in the UFC, and his only win is over Fernie Garcia. Okay? Fernie Garcia is losing to a guy that's on the chopping block that's not good enough to be in the UFC. He's losing this one too. All right, let's get on to the next one. We're finally getting to the more interesting bouts. Zach Pauga versus Bogdan Guskov. Anthony Smith 2.0. I don't know what Anthony's been doing in his free time, but he's had a lot of free time drinking those Moscow mules because he's been able to clone himself. And he's sneaky. He's crafty. We see Anthony. And you know what? Bogdan Guskov has one of the most pathetic winning records I've ever seen. If you look at the guys that he's beating, I kid you not, we're talking 45-year-olds. We're talking lightweights that are also 45. We're talking guys that are like 3-10. I mean, he's got a very suspect record. And we saw him come in on short notice to face Volkan Ozdemir, who put him out, right? Who subbed him, but knocked him down and hurt him a couple of times in that round. Then got the rear naked choke. And he's up against Zach Pauga, who is a decision merchant at heavyweight. Can't get a finish to save his life. And Zach Pauga has moved down a weight class. This is at light heavyweight, by the way. But he's still kind of smaller for that weight class. And Bogdan is a big guy. He's 6'3". He's lean. He looked, even though he took that fight with Volkan on short notice, he looked good. He looked fit. He looked lean. He looked big, and he's got big pop. He's got big pop in his hands. He's been knocking guys out. But again, the guys that he's knocking out are cans. And I'm not even using that term lightly. We talk about plumbers. These are the roaches that you'll see under the toilet that hasn't been washed for 40 months, man. These are Bogdan's opponents that he's taken on. Okay? I'll try to have a couple of them on screen, but this is weird because I know that Bogdan is a finisher. He's got big power. He's a guy that's the more natural light heavyweight. Even though Zach Pauga used to be a heavyweight, dude, Bogdan's still going to be bigger. He's got the reach advantage. He's got the power advantage. And he took that last fight on short notice, and he wasn't really able to prepare for it fully. So I am going to be picking Bogdan Guskov unless Zach Pauga smudges him up against the fence. But again, I don't think that's going to happen, right? Sure, Volkan took this guy down and Volkan subbed him, but Volkan is still a top 15 guy that's like a big light heavyweight. I think that Bogdan's going to knock out Zach Pauga, who's been chinned by Kamaru Usman, and he couldn't even finish Jordan Wright. So if you're looking at Bogdan getting knocked out by Volkan and you're thinking, oh, the Anthony Smith doppelganger was overhyped. I mean, the only reason he has hype to begin with is because he looks like Anthony Smith, by the way. But if you think that Zach Pauga is chinning Bogdan just because Volkan No Time Ozdemir did it, I think you're in for a rude awakening, all right? Because he wasn't even able to finish Jordan Wright, who has a horrible UFC career, who's been knocked out a bunch of times. And Jordan Wright can't beat anyone. Again, the only way Pauga wins this is if he gets him into the clinch, uses that football background and pushes him up against the fence, and that NPC heavyweight style. But I think Bogdan, it's a much easier fight, much smaller guy, much easier guy to hit. He's going to knock him out. He's going to go through him, land a big gnarly shot, put him away, and it's going to be a big moment. There's going to be a lot of memes the following day related to Anthony Smith's doppelganger. So Bogdan, I'm trusting him to get this one done. Let's get into the next one. Jeremiah Wells versus Max Griffen. Two older guys, man. Two old heads going at it. Jeremiah Wells, we don't really think of him as being that old, but I believe he's 36 and Max Griffen is like 37. This is an interesting one because Max Griffen, he's a tough out, right? There's a couple of tough outs on this card that I will be talking about, but he's a tough out. He's tough. He gave Neil Magny a tough fight. He even dropped Neil Magny. He's got decent takedown defense, and we've seen Jeremiah Wells make some really bad decisions, right? In his last fight, he was fighting Carlson Harris, by the way. He was ragdolling him. He was imposing his will, taking him down whenever he wanted it. And then, of course, he was chasing some submissions in the third round, gets the takedown. It looks like he's on a clear path to victory. I'm pretty sure the live odds must have been like minus 50,000 for Jeremiah Wells, and he gets subbed by Carlson Harris. He just made a big mistake there. He's been knocked down by Semmelsberger a couple of times, and I think that even though he won that fight with the wrestling, Semmelsberger is one of the biggest punchers in the welterweight division. And the more that I've been watching Semmelsberger, by the way, the more that's a bad look for Jeremiah Wells. Not because, it's a shame to get dropped by a guy that has so much power, but because Matthew Semmelsberger, he gets worse every single time I see him fight. He is so reliant on landing the big power shots. His skill is not there. Jeremiah Wells did kind of dominate Blood Diamond, and that is kind of impressive, okay? This is a big test for him on the feet because Max Griffen is a vet. He's kind of crafty, and he's more skilled than Semmelsberger. He's a whole lot better than Funky Junkie Mike Muthetha Blood Diamond on the feet. And Carlson Harris kind of has those wobbly cobbly knees. I'm not going to lie. He's got like the Kamaru bobble to his walk. Jeremiah Wells ragdolled him, and Carlson Harris is kind of a big guy. Shavkat couldn't take him down. Could not take him down. This is a tough one. This is a tough one, right? Max Griffen, he's only losing to the upper echelon. He lost to Michael Morales, and that's not terrible. But the difference between Michael Morales and a guy in, what's his name? The difference between Michael Morales and Jeremiah Wells is that Jeremiah Wells not only has sick pop, he's got big power, but he knows how, I know you guys are going to laugh at this, but he knows how to impose his will. And he's going to go in there, he's going to take down Max Griffen no matter the cost. He's going to put him on his back, and he's going to stink it up for 3 rounds. I'm going to pick Jeremiah Wells by decision. Let's get on to the next one. Devin Clark versus Marcin Prachnio. Both just super run-of-the-mill light heavyweights. Journeymen, I would even say. But Marcin Prachnio, every single time I watch this guy fight, it looks like he hates his job. Maybe it's just because he gasses out after 7 minutes like clockwork. And by the way, his best win and his only decent win is over Khalil Roundtree. I don't know how the hell that happened. He outstruck Khalil. I mean, that's how it happened, but what the fuck was going on that night? He didn't gas out. He looked good, but that was a while ago. That was in 2020. Devin Clark only losing to the upper echelon. Both guys only lose to the upper echelon, right? But Devin Clark has a little bit more lasting power. He's got a better gas tank, a little bit hungrier. He's more well-rounded. Marcin Prachnio isn't going to shoot a takedown. I don't think he's ever shot a takedown in his whole career. He's going to kickbox. He's going to look to stay at range. And of course, I talk about imposing your will. That's the one thing that separates the run-of-the-mill journeyman type of guys in the UFC from the best guys. And the best guys are beating both of them, right? But Devin Clark in his losses is at least going after it. He's trying to advance positions. He's trying to take people down. He's trying to swing at them. And then he's getting finished. Marcin Prachnio is more of a sitting duck. He's just, he's on the back foot. He's floating around. He's not really doing a whole lot. Of course, if there's a William Knight out there, bodybuilder William Knight, that's got the inflatable balloon arms like SpongeBob, he can sit at range and tag him apart with low kicks. But Devin Clark is going to be shooting takedowns. Devin Clark is insanely strong, and he has big power and okay speed. He's got some sneaky kicks in his arsenal too. And I think he's just going to outdog Marcin Prachnio and out hustle him, out passion him. Again, Marcin Prachnio doesn't look like he wants to be there, really. I mean, he just got submitted by Vitor Petrino, and Vitor took him down multiple times. And I think that Vitor is a guy that has a lot of potential. He's probably better than Devin Clark, but Devin Clark, in my opinion, can take him down too. He's lost to Felipe Lins. He's lost to Mike Rodrigues. It's like these aren't even that great competition, all right? And his only finish, he's really not able to get finishes consistently, is over Ike Villanueva, who he finished due to setting up a body kick. He was hammering low kicks on Ike Villanueva, who was piecing him up, who was tagging him up, by the way. And then he landed like a sick body kick, put him away with it. But how often do we see Marcin Prachnio getting these like kick TKOs? Hardly ever. Devin Clark's tough. If there's anything that he is, he's tough. Okay? Marcin Prachnio, his only way to win this is if Devin Clark just sits there at range with the puffed up inflatable balloon arms and trudges forward like a slug. So Devin Clark wins this in the clinch, in the wrestling, mixing it up with the output. He gets it done by decision. Let's get on to the next one. Bolaji versus Damir Hadzovic. Bolaji is winning this fight in the first round by KO. Okay. Let me just confirm what the weight class is for this one. And the reason why I'm so confident in Bolaji is because, number one, he's on a 7-fight finish streak, which is insane. His Dana White Contender Series fight, he was fighting a pretty good kickboxer. He beat the fuck out of him. He was hitting him with beautiful combinations, body shots, and he's got a lot of power. I'm going with Bolaji, all right? Damir Hadzovic, he is 37 years old. Bolaji, I believe, is 28. The hunger is going to be different. Damir's lost a bunch of times in the UFC. I think at this point, he's kind of aware that he's probably not going to be a UFC champ, whereas Bolaji, He's probably got that ignorance is bliss mentality at this point. I can beat anyone on the planet. He's running through people with ease. He's finishing everybody. And Damir Hadzovic, I mean, we're talking about a loss to Mark Chikaze in 2022. All right, again, 37 years old. We're talking about a decision win over Yancy Medeiros. He's getting choked out by Renato in the first round. Christos Giagos beat him by decision. That's not a good look. I'm going with Bolaji. First round TKO. Let's get on to the next one. Carlos Prates is a name that you guys need to get familiar with now, because he is someone that you guys should be watching this weekend. Keep your eyes peeled. He's got insanely impressive striking. All right. Dana White said that he reminded him of Anderson Silva, and I rewatched some of his fights, and I see why, because he's got sneaky timing. Not the highest output. He's a heavy kicker for the most part, doesn't really throw his hands that often, but when he does, and he's kind of a skinnier, lankier guy, he still has some pretty ridiculous power, okay? He's got a long reach. I believe he has a 78-inch reach, 6'1", 30 years old. Trevin Giles has been around for forever, and Trevin Giles just can't finish people to save his life, to be honest. Like, he's always going to lose to the upper echelon. I'm going to go with Carlos Prates to win this fight by a dominant decision or a second round KO. The only guy to ever knock out Trevin Giles is Dricus du Plessis, who has crazy power, but Carlos Prates has the precision. He's got the timing, and I believe he's going to mince up the legs of Trevin Giles, who's going to be doing a whole lot of floating around and a jab here and there. Maybe a body kick here and there, right? He's going to have one of those NPC type of styles, and Carlos Prates is going to fucking sting him with the jab, and he's going to look to sneak in a crafty left hand. I believe he's a southpaw. He's got sneaky front kicks as well that come out of nowhere, and I'm talking front kicks to the face. He really does remind me of Anderson Silva when he's striking. The only issue that I see in his game is he's been subbed a lot, and he's been out-grappled a lot, but you look at his record, and he has a ton of combat experience. He's competed in tons of kickboxing fights and Muay Thai fights and whatnot. The last time he's lost was in 2019, so he was like 26 years old, around there. Got out-grappled by a Russian guy. Go figure. And he's got a bunch of other losses by rear naked choke, arm triangle. I'm sure that at this point, 5 years removed from the last time he's had a loss due to grappling, he's probably fixed that hole in his game, and Trevin Giles is not shooting takedowns. So I'm going to go with Carlos Prates. He's the much more dangerous striker. He's got a really heavy kicking style, and I think that that's going to eat up Trevin Giles, who does move around a lot and isn't so easy to lay hands on. So I'm going to go with Carlos Prates via dominant decision. Again, it's hard to finish Trevin Giles, but I wouldn't be surprised if he gets it done. Either way, watch this fight, and I guarantee that you'll probably be impressed if you've never watched him and you think that this is just some random guy that they're giving to Trevin Giles. It's not. They're probably setting Carlos Prates up for a win here. Let's get on to the next one. Armen Petrosyan versus Rodolfo Vieira. I'm going to go with Armen Petrosyan to win this fight via dominant decision. Classic striker versus the grappler matchup. Armen Petrosyan needs to keep this standing. He's got phenomenal striking, great footwork, good speed, basic striking. I mean, he's not going to be throwing a whole lot of flashy techniques. And if you look at Rodolfo Vieira's record, he's coming off of a win over Cody Brundage, a submission win, and people will look at that and be like, oh, maybe he's actually starting to do well. Maybe he's finally getting comfortable in MMA, because this is a guy that used to compete in jiu-jitsu at a high level. I think he competed in like ADCC. And we know that he got choked out by Anthony Hernandez, and that was like a big upset at the time. I'm not surprised. Hernandez is an incredible MMA grappler. His only wins are Dustin Stoltzfus, who has only one win in the UFC. Dustin Stoltzfus just picked up his first win. I believe he was 0-3 going into that. He's terrible. All right, that's a Abu Smagomedov victim. And Cody Brundage, who's also one of the worst fighters in the UFC. Dude, Armen Petrosyan is going to mince him up. Armen's super underrated. Look at some of these wins. Gregory Rodrigues, split decision, whatever, but still good name to have on it. Christian Leroy Duncan had some hype going into that matchup. AJ Dobson, he's all right. AJ Dobson is okay. He's not a can. All right, maybe I hyped up his wins a little bit too much. But either way, the only loss on his record is to Cal Braujo. Okay, fair enough. Got out-grappled a little bit in that fight. Cal Braujo is a much better MMA wrestler than Rodolfo Vieira. Maybe not as good at subbing people, but better at taking them to the ground. And since he can actually take people to the ground and he has decent control, he's a much tougher test for Armen Petrosyan. I don't think Rodolfo Vieira is going to be able to get the takedown. So I'm going to go with Armen by decision. Let's get on to the next one. Michael Johnson versus Darius Flowers. I'm going with Darius Flowers. Johnson's 37. Darius, I believe, is still in his 20s. If you don't know who he is, he just fought Jake Matthews on short notice in Salt Lake City, and there was a viral moment where Jake Matthews hit this guy and he pretended to be rocked, and then all of a sudden he freaking exploded on Jake Matthews with a big combination and pointed at him and did one of these things, you know. He ended up getting submitted. Fair enough. Michael Johnson is not going to submit him. I don't think Michael Johnson's taking him down. And Jake Matthews, say what you want about him, the Jake Matthews experiment, at least him being a prospect, has failed, but he's probably the best he's ever been. He's been having decent performances. He just had a really close fight with Michael Morales. I know I said Michael Morales wasn't so good earlier on in this video, but, you know, he's got like a lot of advantages over pretty much everyone that he's fighting outside of the rankings right now, and he still does have potential. Darius Flowers taking a fight on short notice with him, losing via submission. He was doing all right in the striking. Again, that's a guy with a lot of experience in Jake Matthews. I think he's going to be able to beat Michael Johnson, who's coming off of a brutal KO loss. And, I mean, it's not like Johnson's been knocked out a bunch of times through his career. He's got knocked out by Emmett, Diego Ferreira by the same punch, pretty much. But listen, I mean, the last win that he has is over Mark Jacasey, and that was a decision. Before that, Alan Patrick. I mean, he's losing to Jamie Malarkey. He's losing to Clay Guida. Clay Guida is a crafty vet. He is a crafty vet, but Stevie Ray is beating him at this point. I think Michael Johnson is probably on his way out. Darius is hungry. All right. He's probably known to Michael Johnson. This is a big moment for him. He actually has a full training camp. He's probably going to get this one done on the feet by decision or a first or second round stoppage. Let's get on to the next one. Brad Tavares, Mr. Takedown Defense versus Gregory Rodrigues, who is underrated if you take into account his grappling. Okay. That's where Gregory Rodrigues does his best work, in my opinion. He's been knocked out. He's been outstruck. He's been in the UFC for a little bit. He's got big power. Everyone hyped him up over the Chidi Njokuani win. And I always said, hyping him up for that? I mean, he's not that amazing there. Gregory Rodrigues still has some phenomenal wins on his record. Coming off of a good win over Dennis Tululin, but Tululin always gets beat in the grappling on the ground, and Rodrigues is just the next guy to do it. But he's got a win over Jung Young Park, okay? He's got a win over Josh Fremd. I mean, I don't know why I'm bringing up Josh Fremd as if that's something to brag about. But I'm still going to pick him to win this one because Brad Tavares isn't that dangerous on the feet. All right, I think that back in the day when Romero and Whitaker were fighting Brad Tavares, this was a more formidable opponent, more dangerous guy. When Izzy was fighting him, you know, everyone talked about how tough Tavares was. He was a big hitter. But in reality, it was just kind of his toughness that was standing out in a lot of these fights. Gregory Rodrigues, yeah, he doesn't have the best chin. He's not the best striker, but I still think he's going to be better than Brad Tavares, who, again, sure, he can beat Chris Weidman. Chris Weidman wants to make a return. Someone's got to shut him down, man. Chris Weidman, you need to get it through your head. You can't fight again. You're getting not only beat, all right, you're getting 30-20'd by Brad Tavares, who's not even that great on the feet. Just call it quits. But outside of Tavares' takedown defense, there's nothing that shines in his game. All right, he's not going to leg kick TKO Gregory Rodrigues like he was about to do to Weidman. So I'm going to go with Gregory Rodrigues to win this one by a decision, or maybe we could see a KO. Possibly. We could maybe see a KO. Let's get on to the next one. The next one, Ihor Peteria versus Robert Brysek. I was about to go with Ihor Potieria because he looked the best he's ever looked in his last time out against Rolando Bedoya. Or was it Rolando Bedoya? No. It was Rodolfo Bolato. My goodness. I knew I fucked that one up. Rolando Bedoya is one of Oliveira's training partners. Bolato is one of Pereira's training partners. He's got the classic Eastern Island head and pulled off one of the greatest comebacks I've ever seen. I mean, Ihor Potieria was 10-6ing him. Dropped him, hurt him, almost had him out of there, and within a couple of minutes, the tide changed and Ihor Potieria got finished. Kind of sad. I feel like the referee didn't give him the same chance that he did to Bolato. But Ihor looked good in that fight. He was tagging up Bolato at range quite a bit, piecing him up with straight shots. He looked good speed-wise, but he ended up losing. He got finished. Robert Brysek, the reason why I'm going to go with him is because he's better on the feet than Rodolfo Bolato. All right, he's crisper. He's not got fancy striking, but he sticks to the basics. He has big power in his hands. He's fought decent levels of competition, and Ihor Potieria has lost every single one of his fights in the UFC, and he's gotten knocked out in, I believe, 4 fucking fights at this point, and he's only won over Shogun Rua, and that was Shogun's retirement fight. All right, he's lost to Nikolai Negumereanu. He's lost to Carlos Olberg, or maybe not 4, he's got 3. Rodolfo Bolato also knocked him out, the guy that I just talked about. But Robert Brysek, UFC debut, I think he's a little bit crisper, and I think he's going to chin Ihor Potieria, who's been finished a bunch of times, who just hasn't proven to be UFC caliber at this point. So I'm going to pick Robert Brysek to get this one done in the first round by KO. On to the co-main event, Dan Ige versus Andre Fili. Both guys are in their prime. Both guys are the best they're ever going to be. And I'm going to go with Dan Ige to win this fight, guys. All right, I think that Dan Ige is a step up in competition from anyone that Andre Fili has ever beat. He's coming off of a good win over Lucas Almeida. Knocked him out, but Lucas Almeida is nowhere near as good as Dan Ige. Bill Aljo, all right. Bill Aljo's all right, but he's not Dan Ige level. I mean, who has Andre Fili really beat that's that good? Really? Dennis Bermudez, Artem Lobov, T-Rex Arms Artem. The best win that he has recently is Charles Jourdain. And Charles Jourdain, I mean, he's kind of been disappointing recently. Couldn't even take down Sean Woodson, who's a toothpick. And I know Sean Woodson's hard to take down. Before people call me a casual, I always make fun of that idea because, I mean, you just look at him. He's got to be easy to take down. Come on. He's like a toothpick out there. Listen, Dan Ige is showing that he belongs at the highest level. All right. He's showing that he belongs. Even in his losses, things are competitive. Like his loss to Josh Emmett, I actually think he won 2 rounds out of 3. Should have won that fight. His loss to Bryce Mitchell, very competitive fight. Bryce Mitchell didn't do a whole lot on the ground other than control. He didn't hurt Dan Ige. He didn't land damaging ground and pound shots. It was Dan Ige that had a decent argument to win that fight based on damage. I don't think it was a total robbery, but you know what? It was very close. The Calvin Kattar fight, all right, that was clear, but Ige hung in there. He did his thing. The Evloev fight was the only time where I've seen him truly get worked. And maybe the Korean Zombie fight. But Andre Fili is not really going to be looking for the grappling exchanges that often in this fight. I think he's going to be keen to stand on the feet. And we've seen Andre Fili get out-grappled. I'm not really taking in the grappling into equation, guys. I'm going with Dan Ige. His striking seems to be leveling up big time. His boxing is looking the best it's ever looked. I doubted him going into the Nate Landwehr fight because I thought Nate Landwehr was going to chew him up with kicks and long-rangey attacks, and Ige just got in on the inside and pieced him up. Lost the 3rd round. Fair enough. Nate Landwehr's a dog. But he still dominated Nate Landwehr early on. Fili can be dropped. He can be KO'd. This is a step up in competition, and Ige doesn't have to fear the threat of the takedown. I think he's going to open up on the feet, and I think he's going to totally dominate this fight. Again, the last 2 guys to really frustrate Ige were Evloev and Bryce. They're pressure grapplers that have great takedowns. And Evloev's just a total monster in his own right, because once he establishes the threat of the takedown, his striking comes into play, and he's dangerous there too. Maybe not finishing a lot of guys, but still somewhat dangerous. I'm going with Ige. If he can avoid the KO from big meaty hooks, Josh Emmett, I think he can avoid the KO from Andre Fili. The only thing Fili really has going into this is a reach advantage. And that's kind of it, man. That's kind of it. And I like Ige's boxing defense, and I like his ability to work his way in, bobbing and weaving, right? So I'll go with Dan Ige to get this one done. And I think he's going to get it done by decision. Let's get on to the main event. Twig, snap,
But if he gets hands on your eye, then he's going to start snapping limbs.
Limb snapping, twig crunching.
If you find yourself in bottom position against Jack Hermansson, his ground and pound is very, very dangerous, and it's very calculated.
On to the main event, Jack the Joker versus Joe Pyfer. Hermansson's so skilled. And I mean that. I actually mean it. Jack Hermansson is actually one of the most underrated middleweights on the roster, skill-wise. He's got a phenomenal submission threat. If he takes you down and he gets on top of you, if he mounts you, if he gets into half guard, it could be nighty-night night. Now, of course, you're not going to sleep. You're not getting KO'd, but you could get overwhelmed. Hermansson has great technique. He's got great control on the ground. He's got great ground and pound. Submissions. His kicks are great. His fight IQ is pretty solid. He's got great fight IQ. The man knows how to impose his will. He's great at fighting on the back foot. In the Roman Dolidze fight, I know he got subbed. He was beating up Roman Dolidze on the feet, just making him look easy, making him look simple, right? Hermansson in the Chris Curtis fight, just shit all over him. And I rewatched that. Hermansson was making him look silly, kicking him at range, jabbing him up, moving, using his lateral movement. He was on his bike the whole time, but striking with high output. And Chris Curtis, of course, was bitching in the center of the octagon, expecting Jack Hermansson to butt foreheads with him and then just start slugging in the pocket. Hermansson's smart. He's got good grappling. He's got skill. The only issue here is, guys, Hermansson's got 99 problems. Skill ain't one. Jack Hermansson's problems come into play when we talk about his power. You couldn't knock a fly out, and you know that, son. 99 problems, but skill ain't one. Okay? Jack Hermansson, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, Jack Hermansson is the least dangerous middleweight in UFC history on the feet. All right? Jack Hermansson has pillow hands. And I mean this. Like, Joe Pyfer's going to knock him the fuck out. Seriously. That is literally the only thing that has plagued Hermansson's career. Pound for pound. The worst punching power I've ever seen. He can't hurt a fly on the feet. And Joe Pyfer is going to knock him the fuck out. I mean it. Joe Pyfer's going to march across the octagon, angry, coming out of a shift at the salt mines. And he's going to plant a big right hand on the chin of Jack. Okay? Or a big uppercut like Cannonier did. Either way, Hermansson can't do shit to Joe Pyfer other than try to take him down. And he could get him down, but Joe Pyfer's a brick wall. He's a massive middleweight. He's got phenomenal grappling. And, you know, I just think Hermansson at 35 years old, coming off of a long layoff, probably got injured in that Roman Dolidze fight. Even though he looked good there, again, he looked good, man. He's skilled. Joe Pyfer doesn't need to respect him. Joe Pyfer has a threat of the takedown to watch out for, and that's it. He can eat shots of Jack Hermansson. He can put his hands down and walk into range. But I think he is going to walk himself into range. All right, he's going to be patient. He's not going to be throwing a whole lot. Hermansson's going to be kicking him. Hermansson's going to be going to the body. Hermansson's going to be shooting takedowns. Pyfer's going to be shucking him off, closing him down up against the fence. Khamzat Chimaev, Gerald Mearshart-esque KO. Okay? And Pyfer is just insanely strong, too. Look at what he was doing to Abdul Razak Al Hassan. I remember that fight, and I hadn't rewatched it up until this week. And I just remember Abdul Razak Al Hassan chopping at the legs of Pyfer, and that's the thing that I remembered. Oh, he didn't deal with the leg kicks very well. Hermansson's going to be able to kick him, and that's going to give him some issues. I mean, to be honest, like, he made that shit look easy. He dominated the fight. He got 2 takedowns in the first round. Abdul Razak, strong guy. He's got okay grappling. He's a black belt in judo, got his way back up to his feet. He was taking some big shots from Pyfer. And in the second round, Pyfer goes out there, gets kicked a couple of times, doesn't like it, picks Abdul up like a rag doll, slams him down, and bullies him into an arm triangle. Okay? Like, this guy not only has good grappling, but he's also just a freak when it comes to strength and wrestling. He's hungry. Hermansson, he can break all the twigs and sticks and bones that he wants. He's probably not getting on top of Joe Pyfer. And I just don't see Jack Hermansson being physically imposing enough to bring Joe Pyfer into deep waters, right? It's like Hermansson is always going to lack a little bit of that extra strength and power, even in his own takedowns. And I think that a guy who's as patient as Pyfer, who's not super high output, who's going to pick his shots wisely, will be able to stay in this fight as long as it goes. Okay, so I think the way it's going to go is Hermansson's going to be picking apart Pyfer with the kicks. He's going to be on his bike. He's going to be going to the body. He's going to shoot a takedown. Maybe he gets it. Pyfer pops right back up. And eventually, Pyfer is going to work his way into range. He's going to make Hermansson feel the pressure. He's going to make Hermansson feel uncomfortable. And we're going to see something similar to what we saw in the Vettori fight, where Vettori, Granite Chin Vettori, and Pillow Hands Hermansson. Vettori hardly drops anyone. There's a reason why he dropped Hermansson. He didn't have to respect his power. Vettori just smothered him and forced Hermansson to throw like a cornered animal until eventually he made a mistake. And Vettori cracked him with a big left hand. And I think that we're going to see something similar. Hermansson's going to be throwing some shots to defend himself up against the fence, and we're going to see Pyfer go over the top and just smash him with a gnarly right. I think it's going to be a similar finish to the one that he got over Alan Amedovski. Like, he feinted an uppercut, I think a lead uppercut, and went over with the right. Poor Jack Hermansson, 35 years old. He's decent. He's got skills. People are going to say he sucks going into this fight. He doesn't suck. He's got great skills, but against these super dangerous guys, or someone like Strickland who has phenomenal takedown defense and sick boxing defense, he's not going to be able to beat him. He's beating the run-of-the-mill guys every single time. He's beating the plotty, old-school style of middleweights like Dolidze. 9 out of 10 times he beats Dolidze. I know he lost to Dolidze, but he was beating his ass on the feet. I will be rooting for Hermansson, right? But I don't think he's going to get this win. Pyfer is going to knock him out. I'm going to say a second or third round KO. That is my official prediction. The reason why I say second or third is because I think Hermansson's going to do a good job of frustrating Pyfer, getting on his bike, and just playing it safe. Kicking Pyfer at range, shooting sneaky takedowns. He's going to get crafty with it, and Pyfer is going to be patient. He's a little bit limited in his approach on the feet. And I also don't think he's just going to sub Hermansson on the ground. He's not going to take Hermansson down and sub him with ease. If he could take him down, I don't think he will be able to do a whole lot with it. Third round KO or second round KO for Joe Pyfer, and he'll return to the salt mines. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Until next time.